go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
This is Dr. Zira, her loving husband Cornelius, and little Milo. The most dangerous to man is little Milo. Why? The time is 1973. The place is right here on Earth. How did they get here? What is their reception?
Welcome, gentlemen, to the United States.
Escape from the planet of the apes. Their adventures are completely fresh, completely new, astonishingly different from what you experienced in Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes. At first, feared and imprisoned.
We'll take the female first. Well, she seems to be pretty smart. All right, we'll go for the banana.
Well, why doesn't she take it? Because I loathe bananas.
I don't believe it.
Zira, are you mad? Till we know who our friends are and who our enemies...
And how in the name of God are we to know that unless we communicate? We can speak, so I spoke.
President.
The president convenes a special board of inquiry.
Have you a name?
Zira.
Does the other one talk? Only when she lets me.
Embraced by our civilization, the nation gives them a hero's welcome.
Address, please.
The zoo.
What is it?
Well, it's sort of like grape juice plus.
How is that?
Very wet.
It's certainly the most incredible story this reporter has ever covered.
And you share the impact of every incredible moment.
Must have been the shock.
Shock my foot. I'm pregnant.
The president's chief advisor wants them murdered, or else the human race cannot survive. The escape. The birth of an infant who could threaten man's very existence.
You're the second human I've kissed.
You are the first.
The relentless chase. The stunning climax.
Zira, I want that baby. If you won't give it to me, I'll shoot.
Why was Washington thrown into a turmoil by this one baby?
Stop him!
Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Now, the biggest, the newest, the most exciting of all the Planet of the Apes pictures. Climaxed by the spectacular revolt of the apes. The most awesome, the most horrifying spectacle in the annals of science fiction. First pampered as pets, then abused as servants, now oppressed as slaves.
Order full mobilization of all security forces, police, militia, and reserve defense units. See that every entrance into the city is cordoned off immediately.
Yes, sir. Our control methods to include the use of tear gas and sedation darts.
There will be but one control method. Shoot to kill.
Ready! Aim! Fire!
This will be the end of human civilization, and the world will belong to a planet of apes!
Watch the screen explode as man faces ape in the ultimate revolution.
Where there is fire, there is smoke. And
In that smoke, from this day forward, my people will plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall. And that day is upon you now!
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your Mission Commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen.
And on this episode of Planet 8, we are returning to the planet of the apes. We're going to be talking about Escape from the Planet of the Apes and Conquest, the Planet of the Apes. And we are indeed in good fortune and good company. Our friend, Lord Blood-Rah, is joining the program today. Welcome again, Lord Blood-Rah.
My lords and ladies, it's been far too long. I am so glad to be here, especially to discuss Planet of the Apes, my first geek love.
Indeed. Straight away, let's kick it over to Chief Engineer Bob, get the ball rolling. Bob, why don't you share a little something with us about these two fine films?
Something? Well, I would encourage all the listeners, if you haven't already, we do have 2 episodes up, one on Planet of the Apes and the other one on Beneath the Planet of the Apes. So hit pause, go back, listen to those, and then you'll be caught up.
We'll wait.
And then here, that's right. Let's just sit here and wait. And then we'll talk about Escape and Conquest. Now, if you remember back Beneath the Planet of the Apes, what happened at the end? The whole planet was blown up. Everything was done. They're finished. Zap. And that's what the studio thought as well. However, it made money. So anytime a movie makes money, what do? You got to make another movie. So what do? Well, they decided to say that Cornelius and Zira and, was it Milo, I think? Dr. Milo had got Taylor's ship running again, and they were able to escape before the planet blew up. And so, of course, going in the opposite direction, they go in the opposite direction of the timeline, and they wind up on Earth in 1971, I believe. And, this movie, I think, is a lot more, well, the first half anyway, is a lot more lighthearted than the first 2 films.
The first half.
Well, it seems like it always kind of struck me. It never really struck me as a theatrical film. It kind of almost seemed like a TV movie. Yes. The way it was shot and things. And of course, now that they're on Earth, they don't have to build sets. They don't have to do effects. I mean, they have the ape makeup, and they're in modern society, or modern back then. And so, it obviously saved on money because they slashed the budget to like $2 million for this movie.
Oh yeah, because only 3 ape makeups were needed, and right. You can tell that from the scenes where they're in the zoo and they're next to a gorilla that looks like it's a suit from the 1940s.
Like it could be Bob Burns.
Right.
Next to them is the most it could have been Bob Burns, right?
It could have been Bob.
Gorilla.
But so they definitely say, and think about $2 million. And I know movie dollars went a lot further back then in budgets, but I mean, I just read the other day this new Avatar is like $400 million budget.
Oh.
And here they made Escape from the Planet of the Apes, probably a much superior film, by the way, for $2 million. $2 million, you get apes in society. $400 million, you get a bunch of blue sea monkeys. But I mean, I think I saw Planet of the Apes and Beneath on TV but I did see Escape in the theaters, and consequently Conquest and Battle. But again, even though it was the first one I saw in theaters, it still has that kind of TV movie feel. Like I say, for about half of the movie, and then it takes this 180-degree dark turn, and there's suddenly fugitives running from the law all the way up to the tragic end.
Right. I think part of what gives it that TV feel, at least for me, is the soundtrack. Because even though we had Jerry Goldsmith back for this, he gives us a very contemporary sounding soundtrack with a lot of very kind of, funky TV kind of music, almost like what you would hear on, a detective show or something of the time. There are occasionally notes of the music from Planet of the Apes. Every once in a while, you'll get some percussive tones and things, but for the most part, it is a very contemporary sounding soundtrack, and it just, to me, it sounded like, oh, did I turn on like Streets of San Francisco or something like that?
Mannix.
Yeah, it pulls you back into that time frame. So it's very dated in that regard, I think.
Well, I mean, if you look back at or listen back at Planet of the Apes and Beneath, I mean, those soundtracks are very Planet of the Apes was very experimental.
Yes.
In the soundtrack.
Brilliant soundtrack.
And then Beneath, it wasn't your pedestrian soundtrack. It was still, somewhat avant-garde. But yeah, once you get to Escape, then it's pretty much a cookie cutter type of soundtrack.
Yeah, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And of course, Escape has, my favorite scene in Escape is during the interrogation when Cornelius explains how the Planet of the Apes came about, which is problematic in itself because
I was going to say
no. I mean, well, there's a comic book thing that kind of explains that. Dr. Milo was kind of the Nikola Tesla of his people, so he was able to get special permission to go into the Forbidden Zone. He found Taylor's ship underwater, brought it up, got it to work somehow miraculously, was able to contact, and while there, found these historic documents that explained how it happened. But when Cornelius explains it, it harkens back to the original novel, which was a mass plague, kills all dogs and cats, humans need pets, they start taking in smaller mammals, they get bigger, 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 finally they start taking in the great apes, and they realize the apes can be trained. The apes can do things around the house. And over a period of time, they become slaves. And in the novel, it's not a violent revolt. In the novel, as the apes take on more and more responsibility, humans regress to a point where a human makes a request of an ape, and the ape just says, no. I'm not doing that.
Well, he does point that out. He's like, then finally, the apes, discovered one word. Yeah. No.
Aldo says no, which is interesting. And also, Cornelius says that process takes like 700 years. From the time when you get to Conquest, it took 20, right? It's 20 years.
Yeah. It was like 1990 years. The distant future of 1991.
Right. Yeah. And it's Caesar that says no. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't explain the time, compacting of time 7 centuries into 20 years. But I like to think on some level, Aldo in some other reality would have been the ape that said no. And what kind of future would they have had if it was Aldo?
Well, you have to wonder. I mean, even though they got in the ship and they went back in time or whatever and it wound up on Earth, is it the same Earth?
No.
Is it a different Earth? And it just takes the same path because of Caesar being born?
Yeah, because it took totally different amount of time, a much shorter amount of time.
That's the thing. You get into all these time paradoxes, right? Because did they create the Planet of the Apes by going back? But then how could there have been a Planet of the Apes if they did not go back and they,
so
it's like
a multiverse.
It is, yeah. Absolutely, it is a multiverse. Yeah, it definitely is.
But yeah, you get the thing that always confused me about, Cornelius's explanation was like, wait a minute, in the first film, all of the apes assume that apes have always been on the top of the food chain because this is what they've been taught, right? Yeah, the sacred skull. And that's what they've been told, and that's what Zaya says. But I guess we could say, well, Cornelius was digging around. He had found that cave with the doll and everything, so maybe he finally figured out that, humans did precede us.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a little bit off. I mean, that's the whole issue with the whole Planet of the Apes, I don't know what you want to call it, saga or whatever. There's so many inconsistencies, right? Even though we enjoy it so much, it's like, this doesn't quite.
But then again, if Dr. Milo could go in the Forbidden Zone and find the ship and all that, maybe he made some discoveries.
Yeah.
They had a whole lot of times flying through space that he could have filled Cornelius and Zira in on. Yeah, you know what really happened? Check this out.
Right.
Of course, Milo doesn't quite come to a pretty end with that horrific-looking gorilla.
Well, I tell you what, I would pay good money to see a TV show based on Bob's theory of Milo just flying through time and space.
Yes.
It's like you could do like time tunnel of the Planet of the Apes.
It's funny because as a kid, we watch these and no problem. 15 years, 20 years. It's interesting. It's great. Now in our adult years, it's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, hold on. 700 years, 20 years, what?
A little too much time on our hands, perhaps. But, it's interesting. I know a lot of people enjoy this movie or think this, is their favorite Apes movie after Planet of the Apes. And I assume that's because we get there's so much focus on Zira and Cornelius.
Mm-hmm.
And
fantastic actors portraying those characters. I mean,
right.
You have to, hats off. I mean, they did such a great job.
Right. You have Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter.
Right.
They give probably their best performance. Well, maybe I think Kim Hunter has a really good performance in the first film. She gets a lot of screen time in the first one. This might be, Roddy McDowall, I think his best performance is probably in Conquest.
Yeah,
but,
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
But still, as a couple, they're very endearing, and, they win you over pretty quickly in the film.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they have a great rapport. And then I was watching one of the specials, and one person brought up that Roddy McDowall had this certain way of walking where it's almost like he would lean forward and that would kind of lead the walk and his feet would follow. And Kim Hunter had the same walk. So the theory was that at some point, Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter got together and he told her, okay, here's how we should walk. And then she kind of followed because they both have the same type of gait or shuffle, throughout the movie, especially when you see them walking along the hills of LA with all the lights in the background and they're walking towards the abandoned ship and all that. And yeah, you can see, he's out in front and she's kind of shuffling behind him, but same type of walk.
And I had heard according to Roddy McDowall's request, when they were first doing the fittings, he said that it doesn't look ape enough. Can we put hunches right at like the base of the neck to bring the costume up a bit? So they did. Then later on, I believe it was for Escape, when they were doing ADR, they had to re-record some of the dialogue. They just went in to do it, and he looked at Kim Hunter and said, "This doesn't feel right, does it?" He said, "No, I can't get into character." So they actually had, without the costume, just the hunch strapped on, and like one piece of appliance just put on, so they could feel it. And then they went in and they were able to do it, which is interesting. Yeah, so much of the character, is those actors, but it's those actors manipulating that makeup.
Well, yeah, they were also talking about Roddy McDowell, with his makeup, he had one request, is that they hollow out the nose. And when they hollowed out the nose, he was able to, because he's able to kind of scrunch his nose.
Oh, right.
And he was able to do that once they hollowed it out.
Yeah. Otherwise, it looks like a mask if it's too still.
And then he also found that if he blew into the mask, the cheeks would puff out.
Yeah.
And he does that in Escape and in Conquest.
And in the first one.
Yeah.
When Taylor kisses Zira, he does that in anger.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was interesting, the input that he had on the makeup and the constitution of the costume, I guess, if he had the hunchman in that.
Pre-CGI, they acted. Actors.
Now, the ending of this PG-rated film
is pretty brutal.
Just how many kids were just traumatized?
I think it was even G, wasn't it? I think this was G. I think it was G. I think they were all G except Conquest was PG. Yeah, I don't know how you get away with shooting the mother and the baby, and then the father falls off the top of the tanker. He's shot. It's pretty. I mean, the whole thing is pretty dark after
just
a certain point.
Which is a really powerful scene where she takes the baby and drops him into the water.
Yes. And then goes to lay next to Cornelius. And when Cornelius is shot, that indescribable noise he makes, I found that, to me, was incredibly touching. This ape of science, this enlightened creature that could only make this primitive grunt at the end, this horrible death rattle at the end was just.
Well, plus when he falls on the deck.
Oh, his legs.
Obviously it's a mannequin or whatever, but yeah, he just falls on his legs and they just snap, and it's unnatural. But then when he's laying there, they have the legs his legs are kind of bent up. But
this is the fine entertainment our parents dropped us off at the theater to watch.
Hey, it's rated G. What the heck?
It was rated G.
Well, I blame the Grape Juice Plus.
Grape Juice Plus, that's right.
Well, we can't get past what would be considered the villain, but again, he's probably not really a villain.
That's right.
Dr. Otto Hasslein.
Right.
Played by Eric Braeden, who, even though I saw him in Planet of the Apes, I saw him much more frequently as Victor Newman in Young and the Restless, the soap opera my mom watched.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, the only soap opera I ever saw was Dark Shadows. So.
But Hasslein, although, because we love the apes, we consider him a villain, but is he really a villain? Because he is seeing this future where apes are going to take over the planet. So he feels like he has to pursue them. He has to protect humanity. So he's kind of ruthlessly going after them.
I'm sure he sees himself as the hero.
Yeah, he's sort of like a Dr. Zaius. He's like a mirror image to Zaius, right? In a way.
Exactly, yeah.
But, in thinking about it, they interrogated Cornelius so they know how it's going to happen. It's not that the children of Cornelius and Zira are going to lead the apes in rebellion. It's this long, drawn-out process. So it's they're kind of jumping to a conclusion that they're going to that the child of Cornelius and Zira are going to lead a revolt.
Well, I think more of it is kind of they think that the child of these two intelligent apes is going to be the one that introduces intelligence into the gene pool of apes in general as reproduction happens, and that.
Would they mate with an unintelligent ape?
Apes
We've
are apes,
seen
right?
what an unintelligent gorilla is like.
Well,
Yeah, but these are chimpanzees. So,
well,
there's a line in
and even
Conquest where at the end when he says lament, and he's saying this is like a spark of many embers that will, eventually lead to.
Well,
yeah.
Somewhere along the line, because if you look at that chimpanzee in the cage, what was it, Heloise? Another terrible costume, right? The chimpanzees and the gorillas and everybody all got remarkably better looking in like 20 years' time.
Didn't they?
Hey, they're looking pretty good now.
Right.
That's fast evolution.
There would be nobody for him to mate with.
Well, not to jump the gun from, we're going to talk about Conquest, but from the end of Conquest to the beginning of Battle, which is another, I think, 20 years, I think.
Yeah.
You've got orangutans talking about quantum physics. When they can't even speak by the end of the movie.
Yeah. Well, those apes are fast learners.
It's that radiation on the planet that's like.
It's the radiation. Marvel did an incredible comic magazine series on Planet of the Apes.
Really?
And that was one of their attempts to kind of explain it. Was, well, the radiation and the virus that was brought back from space killed dogs and cats and increased ape intelligence exponentially.
See, that's why I'm jumping like way ahead now, but that's what was kind of interesting about the new trilogy,
right?
Rise and Dawn and War, and the fact that it was all spurred on by an Alzheimer's drug.
Yeah.
That they experimented on apes, and it increased the intelligence and became, I guess.
Are you referring to the Tim Burton?
Oh, hell no.
Lord, no.
In fact, I'm sure we'll do more ape episodes, but I don't know if we'll do that one.
I mean, that was a really clever way for them to explain how, these apes started this revolution and how they took over things and everything by just inducing
somehow there had to be something that sparked it.
Right.
Yeah.
And this experimental Alzheimer's drug was definitely an explanation of what could have sparked the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And why it's not like Caesar implanted intelligence in all these apes. No, he distributed this drug. And as they took it, they all became more intelligent. But getting back into the 70s, though.
Yeah, take a step back.
That's right. We'll do that episode sometime later.
Well, Bob, you bring up a good point, though. I mean, these medicines trying to fix things, either you're going to create like a Planet of the Apes, a Planet of Zombies, a planet, who knows what science creates these days.
Right, and it was a virus that was in the new Planet of the Apes films. It wasn't just a drug; it was a virus.
Right.
So that explains how it spread to all the other apes in the world and humans in the world. Yeah, killing off humans and increasing ape intelligence.
But as far as escape goes, I think that was part of the fear that this intelligent ape would then kind of introduce intelligence into apes in general, and again, they were talking about 700 years. So it's like, okay, there's a mating of one intelligent ape with a not so intelligent ape. And then they give birth to a semi-intelligent ape. And then over 700 years and generations, then that would explain.
Yeah. And how do you tell that?
It's not like an immediate revolution and, here we go.
Right. It would be something on the scope of 2001 if they tried to do it that way. Yeah.
Like Andromeda strain.
Oh, Andromeda.
Hey, that's podcast worthy. I think we should do something on the Andromeda strain.
Great film and relevant, right?
Yeah,
relevant.
Very much.
We haven't done the films of Michael Crichton. That could be an interesting one.
But anyway, back to the 70s.
But I digress.
So, movie ends in an incredibly depressing... it ends... towards the end, it's incredibly depressing, but then we have that ray of hope that, again, felt very tacked on.
The baby swap.
The baby swap with Armando. Oh, yeah, we forgot to mention Ricardo Montalban.
Ricardo Montalban is in
Armando.
He's good in Escape, but man, he is really good in Conquest.
He is. He was just a hell of an actor. He really
And I got to say, I heard somebody, when I was doing some prep for this, I saw some video where some guy referred to him as a character actor, and he said, well, he didn't do much before he did Fantasy Island. And I was like, what? I was like, are you kidding me? And I hate to say this, but I think there's a lot of folks out there who just, if it didn't happen in their time frame, they don't know anything about it. It's like, oh my God, did you ever see all these films with Esther Williams and all these, it was just like, come on, dude.
Exactly. Well, I always kind of looked at Ricardo Montalban as that when he's in a movie, he's pretty much Ricardo Montalban. Much like Sean Connery is always kind of Sean Connery when he's in a movie.
Yeah, but it's good to be Ricardo Montalban.
Oh, no, it's excellent. I mean, I always said if I wanted someone to narrate the story of my life, it would either be Darren McGavin or Ricardo Montalban.
I don't know. When you look at the characters that geeks like us primarily know him from, which is Khan, of course, then Rourke from Fantasy Island, and then Armando. Those are three pretty distinct characters, really. So he carried off. He could do characterizations. He was pretty good. Before that, he was the Latin lover.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Before that, he was primarily the Latin lover.
Mm-hmm. He did. Yeah, he did a lot of that. He was kind of typecasted by Hollywood in that role.
Yeah.
But
rich Corinthian leather.
Versus he used.
But yeah, no, he was. His whole plan was to smuggle Cornelius and Zira off to Florida and release them in the Everglades to create their own colony.
How's that for a cryptid?
Which would have been really interesting.
I saw these two hairy people, and they were sitting there talking and
kind of like getting dropped off on SETI Alpha 5.
That's right.
It's a little disturbing because there's only the two of them, and then any kids they might have, and I don't really want to think too much further than that.
There's one big inbred colony.
Yeah. So it's like hillbilly apes.
Right.
So
Florida Chainsaw Massacre on the Planet of the Apes.
We'll let that lie.
The hills have apes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I may be your uncle, but I'm still your daddy. You will respect me.
But he's all ready to be subservient too, because he's telling Zira, if it's God's will that we be conquered or that we be ruled, I hope that it would be someone like you, and it's he's all ready to bow to his ape masters.
Yeah, he loves animals. I mean,
he
likes them.
He's just willing to let it. It's the future. It's coming. What am I going to do about it?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he also talks about how he does not like people who try to alter destiny.
Right.
And this, obviously, this whole Planet of the Apes is destiny for the Earth. Mm-hmm. And it could still be. Who knows?
Who knows?
There was another Star Trek connection in there.
William Wyndham?
The president.
Yes, of course.
William Wyndham.
William Wyndham improves anything he's in. He's a wonderful actor. I always liked him a lot. Yeah, President of the United States.
Playing it with this kind of Southern accent.
Right,
yeah. And just kind of with an attitude of people like these apes.
But a reasonable man.
Them. Yeah.
He was pretty level-headed and even-keeled to the thing.
Yeah. And he just said, okay, leave it up to the commission. I'll abide by their decision. Leave it up to them.
Well, I mean, it's basically Dr. Otto that, spurns this thing on. Yeah.
Right.
Well, the interesting thing about Hasslein, too, is he's mentioned in the first and second film, I think, because they talk about Hasslein's theory of time travel and the Hasslein curve. And so this guy is obviously, he was science advisor to the president. So,
Yeah, the Hasslein theory of time dilation, which he explains laughably. Here we have an artist painting a picture of an artist painting a picture, What the hell are you talking about? What?
Well, like the guy,
what does this have to do with anything? What do you mean?
The interviewer looks at him, and then he just has such a contemptuous, if you cannot understand this, you are a moron.
Right, yeah. Yeah. But to the point of infinity, when you are the observed and the observer. Does it mention the speed of light at all? Does it relativity? Nothing. It's an artist painting a picture, an artist painting a picture, an artist painting a picture. Hilarious.
Yeah,
That's really pretty but when you're a kid, it's like, oh yeah. I get it now.
Thank you. Yes, I've learned some deep truth now.
So are we on to Conquest, or is there anything else about Escape?
Does anyone have any other comments on Escape?
There was
I just want to end it with... Oh, go ahead, Walker.
Well, I had one thing that I thought was kind of interesting was that I think the beginning of the film is really well done because you see the space capsule and, there's that surprise where they open their helmets and it's like, oh, it's apes. But they did film a sequence where they had Zira and Cornelius and Milo in the spaceship watching the Earth be destroyed so that they connected it back to beneath the Planet of the Apes. But then when they were looking at putting the whole film together, they just felt like it just didn't work having that at the beginning of the film and then going to the capsule landing in the water and everything. They just thought, it's not working. Plus, they were going to have to put in the special effects. That was probably the main reason. They were going to have to put in the special effects of showing the Earth blowing up and, whatever was happening to the capsule. So they ditched whatever footage they have of filming the apes inside the space capsule, and they just went with what they had, which I think was probably a good decision. That was
a good call.
Well, I thought it would be an interesting surprise to have them take their helmets off and their apes.
Oh yeah.
Even though Planet of the Apes is in the title of the movie, but
yeah. And just thinking about it, like Cornelius and Zira did not think flight was possible. Now they're on a spaceship traveling through space. How were they not losing their minds?
Yeah.
Milo obviously was just taking it all in stride because he's the one who supposedly built, resurrected the ship, but they must have been losing their... That would have been a funny scene. It's just both of them going, ah!
But it's kind of a twist because if you think about the original ending to the novel Planet of the Apes...
Yes.
And they return to Earth and they get to NASA and they come off and they're greeted by apes.
Yeah.
Like, we're back on the planet, whatever. And now in this one, same thing. They get to the planet, they remove their helmets, and it's all man.
Right.
Man that's greeting them, and they're the surprise or whatever. So it's kind of a twist on the ending of the original novel. Right. But
well, and to mention the unmentionable Tim Burton Planet of the Apes. Oh. That's the way it ended, is he goes back to Earth and they're apes. So at the end of that movie, I thought, okay, that sucked, but maybe the sequel will be better if there is a sequel.
That's exactly what I thought, Lord Blood-Rah, was, okay, the movie just sucked. But that was interesting, the way that they ended it.
Yeah, so we've got the potential of the sequel possibly being better than the original, which never happened, and probably
couldn't get much voice.
Well, look, one of the we'll move on to Conquest, but one of the best effects that I enjoyed was the ending, "Mama, Mama, Mama."
Yeah, they could have done it like twice and called it good.
Yeah, exactly, Bob.
Instead of looping the film, and you can see it kind of jump back,
back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Got to make sure that the kids sitting in the audience get it.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing.
The first time I saw Planet of the Apes, I mean, I saw it, I want to say I think I saw it in 1970. It was re-released or something, because I know I saw it in the theaters. And in 68, I was 5. So I don't think I would have remembered. But at the end of the movie, my first thought was, wow, they had a Statue of Liberty too. Wow. And it was like 5 minutes later, I went, oh, that's what he meant by they blew it up. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought he was just very upset they blew up the statue.
Every time we talk about Planet of the Apes ending, I always go back to little Bobby Draper on the TV show Mad Men. He sees the ending of the movie, like, Jesus.
You know what I didn't realize about that ending, which even as a kid, when they showed the mama, I was like, they're just running the film back and forth, aren't they? Yeah. What I didn't know until I watched one of the extras on the Blu-ray was that they put a false nose on that little chimpanzee to make it look more like
they put makeup on
Cornelia and Zira. Yeah, it was. They showed him putting a little appliance on the chimp.
Oh,
it's like okay, interesting. Yeah,
but how many would notice?
Yeah, years later.
Well, you've got quite a few seconds there with him going back and forth to look at the nose.
Before he batted the makeup away.
Tore it off and ate
it. Picking his nose.
Oh, my. Okay, kids, let's jump in our ape ship and move over to Conquest.
You know what I thought you said. But anyway.
We're going to jump forward in time 20 years to the distant future of 1991.
1991.
North America, 1990.
This, other than the first one, is my favorite ape film.
Well, you know what, though? I like Beneath a lot because it's really weird. So I think I'm tied right now.
Okay. I like them all. I mean, they all have like pieces that, But anyway, so 1991, pre-dystopian future, soon to be a dystopian future.
Yes. I've thought a lot about that. In the 20 years from Escape to Conquest.
Yeah, what the hell happened?
It seems like the United States dissolves, because what you've got is a series of city-states that they're fascistic city-states. So it did some kind of civil war. Like, so you had, this is interesting. Oh my God. So you had the plague. Then you had an incredible amount
they said the plague was like 1983.
Right.
Yeah.
According to the statute.
So you had the plague, then you had political unrest that led to the dissolution of the United States and led to fascistic city-states.
Well, and I think the failure of Snake Plissken for his mission kind of attributed to this.
But yeah, there is something that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe probably like many interrelated things. Now that we've had the experience of a pandemic, we understand how social, economic, and political things all connect.
Well, also, we can see how things can change really fast.
Exactly.
Was Trump's father running for office in 91 in that alternate future? I don't know.
So yeah, but it is, I mean, and some of this stuff, you could say, well, maybe it's a little too on the nose having these guys running around in these black uniforms, and it's
they're straight up Nazi uniforms.
Right, they're SS uniforms, but it's like, well, these people are inspired by certain things. They tend to emulate things, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least to see that happen.
Sadly, not so far-fetched now.
Right.
And the aesthetics of the movie is interesting too, because if you look at it, everyone's dressed in black.
Mm-hmm.
Except the apes.
Right.
You had, what was it, the gorillas were in red. And the chimpanzees were in green. The orangutans hadn't really even shown up yet. I think there was like one orangutan in the movie.
There were a few. They were like in yellow.
Yeah. And then Ricardo Montalban, he's got the black jacket and turtleneck, but he's got like khaki pants.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other character, I don't remember his name. Harry Rhodes played him. The black
McDonald?
actor. Yeah. He had some color in his... He was wearing like grays and blues, but everybody else was in black.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good decision to have them stand out. Yeah. By the way, this is the only time we ever see an orangutan woman, an orangutan female.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Yeah, right at the beginning there, and we've still never seen a female gorilla.
Oh, that's really odd. We saw a gorilla. We saw a gorilla child in the first film in the funeral, right?
Right.
But there was no women in that scene. I guess you're right.
You never see a gorilla woman.
That's really peculiar.
So where did that gorilla child come from?
But yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting aesthetic choice, and just like the locations they wound up shooting on, which are very stark and have a very I don't know, have the architectural terms, but have almost a prison-like or militaristic-like.
It's UCLA, isn't it?
Well, they did UC Irvine for a few shots, but most of it was Century City, which they had just started building. Yeah.
Isn't that Nakatomi Plaza?
Yeah, you are just full of it today, dude.
You're right.
But yeah, the Century City, which had been the backlot, 20th century backlot for many years, and they had sold that land off, and the developers had started building, Century City, which had some high rises and shopping, and it was supposed to be very modern for the time. On one hand, it was an economic decision because they could easily film right there. Also, they didn't have to show any, futuristic cars. You notice there are no cars. Everybody's walking everywhere. But also just the looks of it, they thought it looked futuristic, but it also has kind of a stark look to it.
It kind of reminded me of that Star Trek episode.
Yes.
Oh God, what was the name of those?
Operation Annihilate.
Operation Annihilate. Yeah.
That I think was on monsters. UCLA. I think that was UCLA, wasn't it? It was on
I believe it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on a local college campus. I could be wrong though.
And it's funny because it looked modern, but yet it was so dark. At least to me, it wasn't like this bright, shining city of the future. You know what I mean?
Police stark.
Yeah. Which is probably more realistic than the opposite.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I thought...
So, Armando...
no, please, go ahead, Lord Blood-Rah.
I was just going to say, Armando and the renamed Caesar...
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, he's not Caesar yet. He's Milo.
No, he was Caesar already. That's what confused me. I think he addressed him as Caesar at that point.
Yeah, and then
he should have been Milo, but
when they have him go to the book, he shows them, my name is Caesar.
Yeah, because I made a note of it here early on that Armando had addressed him as Caesar.
Well, unless he changed his name just to make sure they don't. Yeah, I don't think it's the. Because he originally named him Milo, but then again, who would know?
I thought he picked the name Caesar because he realized I am going to. He knew in advance what he was going to do, what he had to do, so he picked the name of a ruler. But in the playbill that they're putting around, isn't the name on that Milo? Milo the Incredible Trick Writer or something like that?
That I don't know.
I've seen the movie 1,000 times and now I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a good question. I'm going to have to try to find that at some point. But he walks Milo / Caesar around, and he is obviously appalled because he sees apes as slaves. And basically, apes serving man being beaten on the streets. And at one point, he just decides he can't take it anymore, and he screams out, "You lousy human bastards," which causes all the trouble.
I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, aside from, at least in this movie, aside from McDonald and Armando, all men or all humans seem to be assholes. They all seem to be bastards. It's like
true.
Everybody's, if they're not beating their apes, they're like belittling them and yelling at them, and the way they're correcting them, like slave owners, I guess. But I mean, the entire race seems like that's the way it is, except for these two characters.
Yeah, even the announcements over the city PA, unattended apes congregating, stop them, take them. It's like, man, this is just...
Yeah, it's really weird how the entire focus of the society seems to be controlling the apes.
Yeah. Like, all right.
I mean, they knew what they were doing when they made the movie. They knew. I mean, Paul Dane wrote all the scripts after the original Planet of the Apes, and he was British, and he was looking at what was going on in America, at the time, and he understood the civil rights issues and things that were happening, and he incorporated that into the story. And I mean, I look at it now and I kind of feel like, well, it seems kind of like a chancy, risky thing to do, especially when you have this story about apes and you're going to make it about a pseudo-racial, struggle. But I think the way that it went over with people, it seemed like it actually went over really well from the understanding of looking back on it. And some of the stuff they incorporated into it, I mean, was really mindful, because if you look at like some of the things with McDonald, who was black, there was like one part I noticed in the film where there were two policemen like beating away on an ape, and McDonald tells them to stop it. And then after he leaves, one of the policemen says, he loves apes or something. And then the other guy goes, doesn't it figure? And I was like, man, it's kind of shocking dialogue,
The thing is, it's like he tells them to stop beating the ape, and then he's like, tranquilize him and take him away. It's like, all right, so he's not totally.
He's still performing his function in society. Yeah. But they were getting off on beating this poor ape.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of like the first line. It's like, whenever something goes on, they could run out there with their sticks and start beating on apes. It's like, whether it's a congregation or there's that one, the female that Caesar gets together with, she's like sitting alone, and she's got whatever she was supposed to get for her master, but she's like tired, whatever. She's like sleeping on the bench, and they just kind of go up and just start harassing her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at this point, so
there was cruelty in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Caesar's separated from Armand, and the cruelty that they show Armand as well, just interrogating him and trying to get him to admit, and Ricardo Montalban, I mean, he acted his tush off, in those scenes. It's uncomfortable, really, at least for me, to watch that. And that one guy,
Cole.
I don't know the actor's name, though.
Severn Darden.
Yes. Oh.
He is cold. Just cold, bureaucratic, exacting. Just,
who he reminded me of is in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Tot.
Yeah.
The same kind of character, right?
Yeah. Wow, that's great, Walker. Yeah. But, you know, so the separation and so Caesar's being exposed to all this injustice and racism and unbeknownst to the humans, he's understanding and comprehending. And I love as they integrate him into their programs and he decides, well, things need to change. And there's not a lot of dialogue, but the way that Roddy McDowall used his eyes and the manipulation of the mask to just kind of give that knowing glance to the different apes and chimpanzees, and they would just nod like, okay, we understand, you know, what you're saying.
Yes, master.
Yeah, basically, he's like...
It's almost like he had mind control or something.
Right, exactly.
Because he wasn't like walking up to the apes going, hey, you know, light this restaurant on fire.
Yeah. Oh,
Miss Apes
McGillicuddy, her order is for flour and sugar. Add 4 barrels of kerosene to that order list. It's like, what?
And 20 rounds ammunition.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Exactly, yeah. And this film definitely, for Roddy McDowall specifically, his character has such an incredible arc from a child, really, who weeps when he's left in the city alone to a revolutionary.
Yeah.
To a radicalized revolutionary. Yeah.
Right.
And you have to figure before that, he was in the circus. Because when Armando takes him to hand out leaflets, that's like his first exposure. And his first exposure is seeing all these other apes getting beat up and, you know, harassed, pushed around, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, it was cool that they didn't like have him yell out the first time he saw an ape being beaten. It was like all this kind of added up.
Pent up.
You know, until finally his rage hit a point where he just had to speak out or yell out.
Well, there's that scene where Armando has to show him how to walk like a primitive ape.
Right.
Because he's just walking too upright. You know, swing your shoulders more.
Right.
You are too intelligent.
Right,
yeah, he did say that this was his favorite role because he felt Cornelius was a little dull. You know, that he wasn't that emotive, and that with Caesar he got to be, you know, more emotional, and he had more to actually do in this film.
You know, there was a scene too that made me laugh where they're like, okay, we're going to breed. We need, you know, 2 or 3 gorillas and an advanced chimpanzee. And so they're escorting them to their respective breeding areas, and they open the door, and this female chimpanzee kind of gives this like look, and
she's just like in there like Princess Leia when you first see Princess Leia herself.
It's like, what? Like, chimpanzees don't need like a soft bedding and soft lights. And
It was
some music. They had some Barry White playing. You know.
Exactly, Bob. It was great. You know, he kind of gives that look to the camera like, row, row.
He just shrugs.
But after he gets it on, then he gets the revolution going. So,
breaking news!
He got revved up.
I finally found it. You are absolutely right. He is Caesar.
Right.
He is Caesar in the leaflet. So his name, they changed his name to Caesar to avoid him being Milo. Okay, yeah. For some reason, I thought he was Milo, the trick writer, but yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was a little confused when I watched it this time, too. I was like, oh, he's not Milo, he's Caesar. Okay.
It's kind of like a Superman Clark Kent secret identity thing. He just didn't have glasses. So
there you go. Right. Yeah.
And, you know,
he didn't have that medallion on.
Yeah.
Go ahead, my lord.
I was just going to say, speaking of uncomfortable scenes, Caesar's interrogation. When they realize Caesar is the intelligent.
They're trying to get him to talk by electrocuting him.
Oh, my God, that's a horrific scene.
And what does it say? Have mercy.
Have pity.
Pity.
Have
Yeah.
pity.
Have pity.
Yeah.
It's kind of a goofy table because you can kind of tell the manacles are not really they're not really holding them in place, but it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, the way he
and the shot is bad.
Yeah,
the shot is bad because it's up from his chin.
Yeah.
It's a medium shot, it's a medium shot, but it's up from his chin, and you can see the hole in the top appliance.
Yeah,
where because if that hole wasn't there, every time he breathed, he would suck his nose. So you can see that hole that lets air flow through the appliance very clearly. So it's like, oh damn.
Yeah, that was rough.
Doesn't
but
take away from them.
I thought it was interesting that when they're electrocuting him, or they're giving him the shock therapy, whatever you want to call it, he's not just like laying on the table and shaking.
No,
he's like arching his back and yelling and screaming and I don't know if that was the director told him to do that or if that was Roddy's idea or what.
Acting, my friend, acting.
Yeah,
but
I would bet it's McDowell.
Yeah.
How did he know when McDonald shut off the power? Although the lights didn't shut off on the machine, but he shut off the power.
Shut off the table.
How did he know to still act like he was getting electrocuted? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the guy said, he's on all that. He's on the electric table. Just kill him, And then when you turn the dials up, hey, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
So might as well, that's when he, I think, decided
time to fake it.
Fake it till you make it.
Do it.
Right.
Perhaps.
And then my favorite musical moments in that movie start that incredible march. Dun, 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 dun.
It's probably because there's so little music in the rest of the film.
That's right. That's right.
Tom Scott did the music on this. I know Tom Scott's like a saxophonist or something. He's actually been he played in as a session guy in a number of bands and stuff, or on different music. Why can I not speak today? On a number of albums and things like that. But I noticed there was a lot of silences. And now some of them are effective because like when the apes are running through the city and everything, a lot of that's effective. But yeah, then they bring in that dun, 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 that marching stuff. And then right at the end, the confrontation, he brings in some cues from the original Planet of the Apes.
That's right. Yeah.
But otherwise,
effective.
Yeah, otherwise music is not a lot to get excited about, except at the very end there.
I know before the episode we were discussing there's actually two versions of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
There's the theatrical version and there's the extended version, which was the original version that they screened. Mm-hmm. And people were horrified. And it was going to get an R rating, and they had to go back and do some snipping and some reshooting, especially at the ending.
Incredibly.
Maybe Karen can probably cover that better than I can.
Well, yeah, I mean, the main thing was when they shot it, they were showing a revolt, and so they had people getting shot. They had guerrillas throwing people through windows, people set on fire, people get shot in the face. I mean, there was a lot of bloody stuff happening.
Stacking dead bodies and beating them to pulp.
Yeah, so there was a lot of violence. And at the end, Caesar is saying, hey, this is it. This is our revolution. We've taken over. This is our Planet of the Apes. And Governor Breck, we didn't even discuss Don Murray as Governor Breck. Wow, he is just an over-the-top, crazy-ass villain. At no point in this movie, you never in this movie think at any point like, well, he might have a reason. It's like, no, he's just nuts. The gorillas, the apes drag him out, and they've got him in the plaza, and Caesar's making his proclamations. And in the original version, the gorillas all raise up their rifles, and then they just beat the crap out of him and kill him. And that was Yeah, that was it, and it ended with fire and blood, and and the test audiences were like, "Oh goodness, little Timmy is very upset by this."
Back to Don Murray real quick to play Governor Brecht. He looked at Governor Brecht as just a flat out World War II Nazi.
Yep,
that's who he was. And Don Murray spoke fluent German. So he went through the script, translated all of his lines to German, learned them in German, then as he was acting them in his head, translated it to English to give him that extra, that kind of delivery, that kind of Spartan, harsh, Germanic tinge to his voice, which was a brilliant choice, I think. I
thought it was genius. And
it was a really... Well, two of my favorite moments. One is that what you think, boy? Sorry.
We got the Planet of the Dogs on this episode.
Right, yeah. When Caesar and his apes break into Ape Command. And they've got Breck. And he says, "Why?" Caesar says, "Why have you done this to us? Why? Why did you turn us from pets into slaves?" And he basically says, "Because there's an ape curled up in every man." He says, essentially says, "You are the dark side of ourselves." And Caesar flies into a rage and he lifts up his rifle like he's going to pummel Breck, and then he stops and thinks it over and just says, "Take him, go." At that moment, he becomes a true leader. Because it's like, no, I'm not going to kill him. This is for my people. My people have to see him die. My people have to do this. It'll be cathartic for them to do it. So they bring him and lay him down on these steps. And then Caesar gives, I think, in my opinion, one of the greatest speeches in film history. I think that speech is amazing. McDonald says, "Do you really think this can succeed?" And Caesar says, "Where there is fire, there is smoke. And in that smoke, from this day forward, my people will crouch and conspire and plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall, the day when he finally and self-destructively turns his weapons against his own people, something like that." And he goes on from there, and it's just, it builds, and that day is upon you now. That, I get chills every damn time I see that scene. And for it to end with Brett being pummeled into jam on those steps by those apes felt like the right end. Mm-hmm. Now, the tacked on end where Lisa looks up and says no, then he gives the obviously tacked on speech, which Roddy McDowell wasn't even on camera during. He ADR'd it. He recorded his dialogue. And then they put far shots, near shots, close-ups where they got the lip syncing kind of right, that kind of thing. When he says, "But now we'll put away our weapons, and those of us who aren't human can afford to be humane," and da-da-da-da-da. That was tacked on, and it felt
Well, yeah, there was a whole thing about, like I say, they added God into it. If God meant for us to rule, then he meant for us to rule with compassion. And so, it really softened the ending. And that was the ending that everybody saw until, the home video releases. But
right. And it was the ending that they were going to base the sequel on. Right. Because with the original ending, the sequel was going to be Caesar as a mad despot who was overthrown by his own people because he had gone insane. But they tacked on the softer ending, so we got Battle for the Planet of the Apes, which is my comfort film. It's it's like there are no great stakes. Talk about feeling like a TV movie. That feels like a TV movie.
Oh yeah,
great.
Battle feels like a TV. It's much smaller stakes, way smaller budget.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, indeed.
We were already on a small budget. I think this was
Yeah.
1.7 million. Escape was 2. So every time we're going down, down, down.
Right. But they were still making money.
Yeah.
I know each time it's a success, so you'd think they'd throw more money, but yeah, each time it's a success. Let's make another one, but do it 25% cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you recognize where the Apes one-piece suits came from.
I did not.
Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yeah.
Those are crewmen's suits from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Interesting.
They also got other help from Irwin Allen because the the control center was from City Beneath the Sea, and then I think some of the computers came from the time tunnel.
I'm sure it's true. Yeah.
So
sure.
yeah. Anyway, a lot of Irwin Allen in this one.
Oh, I'm sure it's the producers like digging through the prop shops at 20th Century Fox and grabbing whatever they could.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank God we didn't see Robbie the Robot show up.
He could have.
With an AK-47.
Some dome in the background or something could have been his plexiglass head.
Yeah, exactly.
Geez, we could have had apes versus robots.
Yeah, I'd pay good money to see that.
Battle of the robots on the planet of the apes.
Or have some apes show up on a planet of robots. Get your damn robot hands off me.
Get your damn metal claws off of me.
There you go.
You damn dirty robot. So I don't know. Are we talked out on Conquest? Or we got a little more to go? Or?
I think unless there's any last, All right. Well, we're going to kick the Podacan down the road a little, and we'll get into the other film and TV series and whatnot, and
got to get the cartoon in there.
So this is the point in the show though where we have our censor sweep, and being that we have Lord Blood-Rah with us, please enlighten us, Lord Blood-Rah. What programs, what shows, what do you have out there for our listeners?
Well, my lords and ladies, I want to invite all of you to go to youtube.com/Lord Blood-Rah, where you'll find all of the shows I've been working on. You'll find episodes of Lord Blood-Rah's Wrackin Theater, in which I host the best, worst, and wildest horror and science fiction films ever made. You'll find my podcast, Lord Blood-Rah's Wrackin Auditorium, where I host old-time horror radio shows. You can also get that podcast anywhere you find podcasts, Apple, Google, Amazon, everywhere, but you can also find it on YouTube. My latest series is called Captain Paxar's Star Cadet Hour. And this is basically, if you're around our age, it's the kind of show you'd run home from school to watch. It presents a classic old-time sci-fi TV series. Flash Gordon, Captain Zero, Space Patrol, Space Angel, all of that stuff with a unique host, Captain Paxar of the Interdimensional Peace Force. So you can check that out. That new episode of that drops every Saturday. New episode of the Wrackin Theater drops every Friday, and the podcast as well drops every Saturday. There's also another show that I'm working on called the Unified Fear Theory, which are video essays on various aspects of horror. And the second episode has been held up because I'm retooling a few things with the concept. So the second episode will probably not be out until after the first of the year, but the first episode, called The Life Cycle of Movie Monsters, is up there for you to check out. There's also a lot of other things on that channel. So please go to youtube.com/Lord Blood-Rah and check out all the shows there. Please like and subscribe and comment. Every month, if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, at the Orinda Theater, I host Chiller Diller Theater, which is we present classic horror and science fiction films. We're dark in December, but we're coming back January. Well, it's the third Saturday night of the month, and I don't know what that date is right now, but in January we are coming back with King Kong versus Godzilla.
Oh,
classic. Nice. Yes,
yeah.
And so that's 8:30. 8:30 every third Saturday night of the month, and throughout the year, we're going to be presenting classic horror and sci-fi films in a classic old-time movie palace with a full bar, which is wonderful. So, come on. So be sure to come out for that at the Orinda Theater, and you can get all this other information as well at my website, lordblood-rah.com.
Awesome.
So thank you for that.
Well, Lord Blood-Rah, thank you for joining Planet 8 again. We always enjoy your company and your views on whatever we're discussing.
Thank you very much. Always great to be here. Thank you.
And we have the ultimate goal that someday we'll have all these Planet of the Apes films covered, and listeners can go ape by just listening to Planet 8 from Planet of the Apes all the way through the new movies and whatever.
Well, yes. We will definitely have Lord Blood-Rah back on for the next go round. So,
thank you. Yeah.
Hey, that brings this program, this show, this episode to a close. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Share the excitement of Lord Blood-Rah's Nerve-Wracking Theater and Planet 8 podcast. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Until we meet again. Peace out.
On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.
What you have seen here today, apes on the 5 continents will be imitating tomorrow.